First thing we're going to do right now is kind of talk about the Jacquemus show by, of course, Porte Jacquemus. For people that aren't too aware, Jacquemus, as you probably can hear, is a French fashion designer. He founded his brand in 2009. His brand has actually been super successful commercially, especially with the luxury bags that he makes, especially the like Le Chiquito that he made in different sizes. I genuinely think that Jacquemus is a marketing genius. Am I a massive fan of his clothes? Not really. Do I think that he's a marketing genius? Yes. I think that a big reason why his brand has been so commercially viable is because he's so good at marketing. He's built like a cult following. He has like this sort of Jacquemus lifestyle going on. And you can kind of associate the lifestyle with different things, right? It's kind of this whole, you chill on a beach, you're in the south of France. He owns restaurants that kind of have that vibe. He has a store, like he opens pop-ups that are kind of like in these sort of beachy areas. So it's kind of like the branding of Jacquemus. You'll have these campaigns where there's kind of like trams that look like Jacquemus bags going around and all that sort of stuff. So really, really smart marketing, really, really strong. And I think that, to be honest, is the strongest part of his brand, if you were to ask me. I think a lot of the time for me, the clothing leaves a lot to be desired, especially from a quality standpoint. And that's something, as we look in the show, I'll actually talk about because he had a quote regarding the quality of the clothes. So it's interesting to see what they would say about it. But yeah, it's really, really interesting. I think the clothing is really, really commercial in the sense that, like, not everything, but a lot of what he designs you can find at a lot of other brands. Um, I wouldn't necessarily say Jacquemus is the most unique designer, but like I said, the cult following, the marketing, all those things, I think, are things that help push the brand forward. And then they always have these like sets too. The sets are always like these fancy sets. It has to be somewhere that you can only get there by boat, or it's like a jasmine garden. And I feel like part of the marketing of Jacquemus is actually where the set is. Even look, you can see the seating from a distance, it forms a J, right? It's because a lot of the Instagram images, they're going to show the set, they're going to show how beautiful it is. Yes, the sets are always beautiful. That is definitely like a thing. And actually, this I think the location of this show is in Capri. So that's what Jacquemus loves to do. Yeah, and Nokia is amazing. Uni says, okay, but I don't see his work as dreadful. What is particularly bad or uninspired is his work to people. Yeah, I don't think he's dreadful either. I don't think I ever said that. I said the clothing for me leaves a lot to be desired, but I don't think it's necessarily like dreadful or anything along those lines. I tried on some of his menswear, but the quality most definitely didn't commend the price, although the fit of the items are better than most at the price point. Yeah, and the thing about Jacquemus also is that it's not super, super expensive, right? Even though I would say that Jacquemus clothing is actually quite desirable. I think a lot of what he designs is desirable. That's why it sells. And it isn't as expensive as like buying, I don't know, a Gucci dress or a Prada dress or a Bottega dress. So you can kind of look a certain way, you can fit into a certain aesthetic and style without, having to spend loads and loads of money and just empty your pockets. It's not cheap, but it's somewhere in the middle. I also find it quite interesting in this collection. I was reading one of his interviews where he said that in this collection, he wants to imbue like a different view of sexiness because Jacquemus a lot of time is known for like, showing loads of skin and all that stuff. And instead of showing skin this time, he has these dresses that are sheer, but they cover a lot of the body, right? Um, Seems very male gazy to me, but I want to know what you guys think about that in terms of like this is newfound idea of what sexiness is and how he wants to represent sexiness. Marcus says I have a lot of words for this one actually, but I'm currently occupied trying to use half of my attention. I want to know what Micah thinks actually. I do like what he does, like these pieces with the big collars, right? These sort of like sailing inspired looks. And why all that like the sailing shawls and all that sort of stuff, why it makes a lot of sense for Jacquemus is once again, like I said, the lifestyle Jacquemus is all about, you know, the south of France, or it's, going boating or going on a yacht on Saint Tropez. It's very much that is very much part of the Jacquemus lifestyle. So to have references that go along those lines, I think makes total sense to me. Putting the Munchkin bags aside, does the brand have strength in any other area? Um, I guess just accessories in general. So like sunglasses, hats. Jacquemus is very well known for hats, especially the really big ones. Obviously bags. And the thing about Jacquemus is they have so many different iterations of bags. I know they launched like 2 new bags in this collection too. It's in the show notes. If you guys want to read the show notes, you can read it on Show Studios um page, like their website. It's there. Um, you can read it, but the show notes, you don't really get much from the show notes apart from them just basically describing the collection. Like, oh, there's like all sides of the dress has a jersey cascading, peeling back, curving down to the sides, or revealing through sheer fabric, all that stuff that show notes normally do, which is why I didn't think it was relevant to read. But yeah, if you guys want to see more information, especially about the bags that they launched and all that sort of stuff, it's in the show notes. Okay, Jacquemus swimwear is big. That's interesting, actually. Also, I like the silhouette of this dress. This sort of like, wait, let me go back. That's like A-line, but like super exaggerated A-line. That's actually really interesting. This like ultra A-line. um, that's really cool. That's really cool. Ultra exaggerated A-line dress that has the silhouette of a skirt. That's probably the most interesting piece in this collection, to be fair. Yeah, that's probably the most interesting piece in this collection. He has a good relationship with France too. They always let him use insane locations. Yeah, exactly. Which is why a big calling card, I feel like, for Jacquemus is actually where the shows take place. Um, so yeah. Yeah, also Pilar. Yeah, yeah. Some of the looks even were inspired by the movie too. I just didn't want to mention it because it's in the show notes, and like I don't know, it's like the house is famous, yes, but it's like it goes into Jacquemus just using really famous locations, or locations that look really picturesque for, his shows. I don't think there's more to it than that. Because the thing about Jacquemus is that his work is not ultra conceptual, right? So if it was a show that was done by John Galliano and it was in that location, there'll be so much more reasoning as to why that was chosen, other than it's famous and it looks good, which is the case for Jacquemus. He says, "I'll be in a mediocre but extremely handsome gym body, white gay man opens many doors." I think as a person, I like Jacquemus. I think Jacquemus has a really good energy. I think Jacquemus is really fun. I think Jacquemus, once again, I think part of his personality is why he has such a cult following. Once again, I just think the clothes leave a lot to be desired every time. Um, then interesting. I think sometimes people say it's like Zara, and I think that's a bit of a stretch. I think I think that his clothes are definitely very ultra commercial, and quality is something that they definitely need to work on. But I think that some of his cuts you can't just find. You're not going to go into H&M and M and Zara and find some of these cuts, right? Um, but it's just yeah. As a designer, I've just never seen him as like some crazy great designer. I think if books get written about Jacquemus, like 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now, I think what will happen is we're just going to talk about his marketing. I don't think there'll be much mention on a lot of the clothes, right? I don't think it's not going to be like a McQueen book where we're really delving deep into the actual silhouettes and the ideas. We're actually just going to be looking at the marketing and how he was able to, you know, um, use marketing tactics to compete with major luxury brands, right? I think that's what we'll focus on when we talk about Jacquemus in the future. Micah says, "Is Jacquemus the Apple of this space? Of his space? I don't think so. Can we call Jacquemus the Apple of fashion? I don't think so." Yeah, exactly, Micah. You have to explain that. Everyone's saying no. Okay, not fashion, his space, i.e. lifestyle brands. The Apple in what sense though? Apple meaning that Apple don't make the best phone, but Apple is the best, I think, aesthetically. So most people gravitate towards it because it's cool and aesthetic, rather than Apple actually, making products that have the absolute best features. Like if you want a laptop that has the absolute best features, you'll get a Windows laptop that where you can like just put everything in it, right? Is that what you mean? That's what I'm really trying to understand the analogy. Sorry to bomb this, but the only interesting thing about this Jacquemus is the location. Sorry, the movie Bardo Godard. Yeah, I do like some of the pieces. The problem is, even though I do like some of the pieces, even though like if I was a woman, I would wear some of the pieces. It's not, you know what I mean? There's nothing about Jacquemus that I look and I'm like, he's done something interesting, or he's pushed the mold a bit, or even designers that are commercial, like Phoebe Philo, push the mold in different ways, right? Um, Peter Doe pushes the mold a lot, even though people will still say that his stuff is commercial. But with Jacquemus, I just never get a sense of like a designer that really spends a lot of time designing. It's almost like a designer that spends the tiniest time designing and most of his time working on the ad campaigns and the marketing campaigns. And it shows because the marketing is in the set, it is in, the music, it's in the campaigns, it's in the way they run their Instagram page, and it almost seems like the clothing is an afterthought, especially because the quality is also really terrible, by the way. And they admitted to this, by the way. Let me read the quote that Jacquemus said when he was asked, I think in Vogue, about people commenting on the quality of the clothing being bad. So what he said was, I'm ambitious to work every day and make things better and better, he said. It's taken time and it's a fight with factories to work with a new savoir faire. Then he also said that he's working a lot more on ready to wear because he sells more ready to wear, which is why it's now more of a focus because earlier on, what they were selling most of were the bags. And I think he even had a quote about that. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, here it is. This is where he was talking about selling more ready to wear now. So there's more of a focus on it. So he said, we have never sold as much. Our stores used to be full of people buying one bag. Now we have people spending 15,000 euros on clothes. Perhaps, he reflected, it's because I've changed a bit. I'm a dad now and I'm thinking about the next generation and having consistency. But what I do know is that I'll be doing this the same for my whole life. So, yeah, you can tell the designer is literally owning up and saying, "Yeah, we need to get better and better. We need to make things better and better." It's a fight with the factories, um, which I still don't understand. I find it so hard, especially because I've worked. If I hadn't worked in the fashion industry, I would understand. But because I've worked in the industry, I know how production works. I think as a brand, especially if you're making as much money as Jacquemus, it's not that hard to have good quality control. It takes more time, it takes more effort because most factories, to be honest, they'll just do what they can get away with. It's up to you as a designer to be picky and to tell them we're not paying for this order if you don't do it the way we specify. And over seasons and seasons, you build a relationship with a factory and different factories and producers to where they start to understand your requirements and what you require of a factory. So I've never, this excuse of, oh, we're working hard to fix the quality, I've never understood it. I've never understood it, especially because Jacquemus now is a brand that we know makes multiple hundreds of millions, right? I just don't get it. I don't get it. I just don't think it's good enough, to be fair. I don't think it's an excuse that should be valid for any kind of designer unless you're like really small, like you're really tiny, so you couldn't afford, you don't really have any power when it comes to factories. They can just like mess you around. That makes a lot of sense. But a brand the scale and the size of Jacquemus, I just don't get the quality issues. I don't understand it. Someone said the Jacquemus Air Max 1. Yeah, the Jacquemus Air Max 1s are so boring. That's true. I have to agree with you on that one. To be honest, I think people only say Zara because of the color palette. A lot of the silhouettes and shapes are ones Zara wouldn't go anywhere near, to be honest. Yeah, that's what I said earlier. Like I know people say the Zara thing. Um, I think people just say that because Jacquemus is not the most revolutionary of designers. He's just not. But the Zara thing is a bit of a stretch. I think he does have different silhouettes that you can't just find. So that definitely is true. But someone said like the tailoring and the fit, that's one of the issues I have with Jacquemus too. And I think I've said this in previous videos and live streams that a lot of times things fit really weirdly. It just, once again, it's like I said, it just sometimes comes across like the clothing is an afterthought. Um, it's like I'm watching a marketing campaign, like an ad campaign, not a runway show or a fashion collection. Those are the questions I have. What is a factory able to do slash not do that would require an atelier instead? Or is it just that factories aren't willing to recreate more elaborate designs due to cost? So from my experience, obviously I haven't worked with every single factory in fashion. I've worked as when I was working in the industry for brands, I've gone to factories in the UK and Portugal specifically. So how it works is most factories, because most people that have brands, they don't really know what they want or what like they're intending to do. So brands will have like different patterns and different designs that are kind of just, you know, like their GRs in a way, their general releases where everyone can use it and just put their logo on it, like hoodies, t-shirts, all that stuff. So they can make those easily on demand whenever and at really high quality, especially the factories I've been to in the UK and the ones in Portugal. Then you have ones where a designer like Jacquemus that's making, you know, clothing that isn't super typical of like the hoodies and the t-shirts that they would make. Jacquemus would make the pattern in the atelier and the sampling process would happen in the atelier. Then when you finish that, you'll take it to the factory, the patterns, the tech packs, the samples, and through them getting the tech packs, the sampling, and also you might have to explain if they don't really understand how it's made, you might have to explain a bit more. And then from then, they're supposed to go off and make that. But sometimes the factories are a bit lazy. So let's say you want, and I talked about this in when I reacted to a documentary on Patreon recently, where sometimes let's say you want a certain shade of red, but the factory doesn't want to, let's say they have a certain shade of red dyes. That they have in stock, instead of these cheap ass bastards to actually just go and buy the shade of red that you actually need in their dyeing process, they would just use the red that's available because they're cutting corners. It's like, well, it's already there. So that's where the quality control comes in, right? Because factories always will do that, just trying to find any way they can save money because most designers and most brands aren't picky enough. So they get away with, you know, oh, I have this shade available, so I'm just going to use this dye instead. Oh, we have this available, so we're just going to use this instead. And as a designer, as a brand, you have to be like, no, we're not paying for that. And once factories start to lose money, once they realize that they're going to lose you as a client, they're going to actually take you more seriously. Especially, once again, going back to the Jacquemus conversation, Jacquemus is a big enough brand to where a factory could really suffer business wise if Jacquemus was like, okay, we're pulling all production from your factory. So that's why I find it really hard when a designer like Jacquemus comes out and says in a Vogue Runway interview, we're working really hard on quality control on factories. I don't get that. I don't get it. Yeah, Rachel says it's all about quality control. 100%. 100%. The activations Jacquemus uses are always so effective. I 100% agree. I 100% agree. Jacquemus is a good creative director, not so much of a designer. Um, Jacquemus plays with all the French topics, not in a good way. It's just plain and boring, like the lavender fields or this collection is this house. Yeah, Pilar, that's exactly what I was talking about. Where the reason why I didn't even talk too much about the location is because I can't tie it to anything. Like, apart from the location being famous, I can't tie it into because, like, a deep inspiration in the collection, which, you know, designers that are really good and conceptual would do that, right? It's not just the location for location's sake. There's always like a reason. I know exactly who the Jacquemus customer was before I saw them on the streets, which is impressive. I've never owned a Jacquemus and lucky never will, so I can't speak on quality. Is it a very well-known thing? Yes, it is. It is. I only know this because apart from having friends that have worn Jacquemus and bought Jacquemus, online people just talk about it a lot. Once again, because I follow all these like these girlies on YouTube that buy luxury brands, and and buy like the bags, especially, but sometimes the clothes, and they're always complaining about it. But whether it's an issue or not, Jacquemus literally, whether we think it's an issue or not, Jacquemus literally owned up to it. Jacquemus literally said, it's taken time and it's a fight with factories to work with the new savoir-faire. That's literally what he said. This is not me. This is not anyone else. This is Jacquemus himself saying that. Because if your quality was really good, you wouldn't have to be on the defensive, would you? The work of it is extremely strenuous. My husband travels to factories outside Milan and factories all over Asia every month for this nubuck suede quality production, and not everyone cares enough. Exactly, Rachel, which is what I was saying. It's not, you can't just expect the factory to care, because they don't. That's not, if you want your thing to be made to a good quality, it's not just about giving the factory tech packs and samples and just being like, okay, see you in 2 months when I get my stuff. You have to be on top of it. Otherwise, they'll just take the piss, which is why brands, considering how much money they spend on all this other stuff like marketing and stuff, they should invest some money on like a quality control consultant or something, where just a representative of the brand, and their full-time job is to just go liaise with the factories and make sure that everything is being made to specifications, because that's just one job. It's not going to cost that much for these brands that have so many employees, right, and make so much money and spend so much on marketing. Turn that into, I don't know, a 60 to 150k job, depending on how much they're willing to pay. And there you go, like someone that really understands fabric quality, comes from a textiles background, just hire them and they can become like a quality control consultant. If I was high up in a luxury brand, I would do that personally. Especially because all of them have really shit quality right now. Some of it is deliberate because they're cutting corners, but I think also some of it is just these people being not on top of the quality control process. I watched the film because of this show, so that's a plus. That's good though. Jenny Kim, everyone was going crazy about Jenny Kim. I've seen a lot of influencers with Jacquemus bags, but personally, I don't know any real life people that own one. Okay, in London, I do see a lot of people wearing the Jacquemus bags. I actually think they're nice. I think they're cute, especially the really small ones. I think that was like a cute trend that Jacquemus started. The girlies, are you following them for? Yeah, I'm 100% following them for research purposes. But yeah, I'm following them for research purposes because I'm not going to be the luxury bag customer, right? So yeah, I just, because I need to know as a journalist, I just need to know what's going on in every facet. Honestly, it's so uninspiring to see brands having this amount of money and not making cool shit. I know, right? I know. I know. I feel like Simone and Phoebe Phalo sit at exact opposite ends of the fashion design spectrum. Yeah, and that's like the commercial fashion side spectrum. Could you name some brands that you believe do a good job in the quality department? It's funny, every time I lambast brands for having bad quality, I always get asked this question. It's a very valid question, by the way. Um, so from personal experience, I would say Rick Owens. I would say Rick Owens, for the most part, not every time, but most of the time, has good quality stuff. Um, I would say Andre Mista now, for the longest time. I'd say most of Andre Mista pre-Antonioli, like BBVA time, that era of Andre Mista, the quality was atrocious, to be honest. And that's one of the reasons why the brand, I feel like, had financial issues, because I think the clothes were cool and interesting, but no one wants to feel like they're being shagged by a brand. So Andre Mista now, post Antonioli, I think I can vouch for the quality now. Um, I'm trying to think of what luxury brands. Bottega, obviously. Bottega makes really high quality clothing. Whether the clothing is accessible by price, that's a whole different story to be had. Loewe has really good quality for the most part. Um, I'm trying to think what other brands. Those are like, I'm thinking of like brands that have runway shows, but we can talk about, like footwear companies like Churches or Trickers or something. There's many brands that have good quality. It just doesn't seem to be the ones on the runway a lot of the time, which is quite sad. It's quite sad. But I just wanted to go through Jacquemus's Instagram to talk about all these like really fun and interesting marketing campaigns that I'm always talking about that they do that go really viral online. I mean, this campaign has almost 800,000 likes. which is insane. Michael says Bottega quality is king to me. Yeah, but I mean the price point is also king. Good lord, Bottega price points are wild. Yeah, so you've got someone swimming and dragging some of the looks. This is quite interesting because obviously because you can only get to the show location by boat, so obviously they had to boat across the looks and everything else. So it's kind of cool that they're finding interesting marketing ways to sort of, promote that. Um, so yeah, this was just all the marketing campaign stuff around them showing Capri. You've got someone ironing on an ironing board while floating on the water. It's such such a Jacquemus thing. Such a Jacquemus thing. Sitting on a sofa while being trolleyed around the road. It's cool. Like I've told you, I'll give it to Jacquemus. I think Jacquemus is honestly a marketing genius. Like hats from the collection stacked all in one with a picturesque setting. I get it. Boxes. It's just very cool. It's very, very cool. Their marketing campaigns, sorry, are always really fun. Um this is the part of the Jacquemus Nike Air Maxes, the collab. I think they're not interesting at all. Um, but yeah, that's the story for another day, I guess. You got some more Jacquemus marketing campaigns. This is a new boutique that they opened, I think, in Saint Tropez. And it also has a restaurant. So this is once again me talking about this Jacquemus lifestyle that people I think buy into. I think Jacquemus, more than a brand and the marketing and stuff, I think people want to buy into a lifestyle. They want to feel, part of the Jacquemus community or cult or group in a way. Jacquemus. That's actually quite funny. Like a Jacquemus tan. Slash being kind of this person kind of made to look burnt, and it's very much like Saint Tropez to me is the most Jacquemus place to have a boutique because Saint Tropez is very much about like holiday lifestyle. That's very much what the brand Jacquemus aligns itself with, right? That's very much the vibe. This is another one of the campaigns with the bags being superimposed onto like cars and trams, made to look like, the bag's actually driving through Paris. It's such a shame that the cuteness and freshness from the marketing doesn't appear in the clothes. Like, just give it some graphic prints or something. 800K likes my favorite designers could never. I know, right? Like, Jacquemus has social media on lock, and I'll always give him credit for that. I do think he's one of the best designers out right now when it comes to marketing, even better than most luxury brands too, like the big ones under conglomerate. How Luxury Lost Its Luster is such a good read. Talking about all of this, yeah, on Patreon, Gravis. I don't know if you know, but on my Patreon, I'm literally reviewing the book chapter by chapter. So yeah, that's something that we're always talking about. I've also done reactions on Patreon to the Kingdom of Dreams series, if you've seen it. So that's like another thing, which is obviously inspired by the book. It's like a very short summary of the book and Gods and Kings in a way. Jacquemus is very small brand boutique vibes with way bigger budget. I see the appeal definitely. Yes, Understitch, it's just me today. I'm flying solo. I'm flying solo. Was it you who pointed out that Jacquemus campaigns look a lot like old Giosana campaigns? Yeah, so I've pointed that out, but not in this stream, unless someone else pointed it out. That's something I've said in like previous streams. Like some of the branding of Jacquemus is akin to some stuff I've seen from Giosana in the past. But it's I didn't say it in this stream. So if someone said it in this stream, it definitely wasn't me. Would you say that Jacquemus has better marketing than Diesel? Yes, I would definitely say that Jacquemus has better marketing than Diesel. Diesel marketing is cool too, but yeah, Jacquemus is definitely way better, way better. But yeah, let's just have a look on Vogue Runway at some of the looks close, and then we have to move on to Charles Jeffrey Loverboy, which it's kind of more fun to talk about because there's more conceptual things when it comes to Charles Jeffrey Loverboy. So there's more to talk about there. What is it also with? I get this kind of like, I don't know if this is an actual towel fabric or, it's an optical illusion and it's made to look like a towel fabric, like a bathrobe, which obviously makes sense for Jacquemus because Jacquemus is once again very holiday, very by the coast. That's the vibe of Jacquemus. But it seems to be everyone is having their take on a towel. It's either Balenciaga or Ludovic de Saint-Saëns or Jacquemus. Like it just seems like everyone is doing their own version of a towel. But yeah, when Jacquemus does this A-line stuff, like with this piece right here, the A-line stuff I always like from Jacquemus. This is like an ultra exaggerated A-line piece that's really cool. Not the most wearable, but it's cool. But yeah, I would say though, you know what? Let me give Jacquemus some credit. In this collection, things actually fit really nicely on a lot of the models. Versus, I remember my critique in a lot of past collections has been that the fits, it almost seemed like they designed clothes for models that it wasn't intended for, and they kind of changed models last minute because things were that ill-fitting. Whereas here, things are fitting really, really well. Maybe that's something that, the brand has been able to refine over time, like how things fit, how things look. Like even this blazer on this, like it fits really, really well. It fits really, really nicely. So that's something I can definitely see that Jacquemus has worked on and they've been working on in the atelier, because yeah, that before, oh my god, the fit. Oh my god. Someone's saying the towels are a gimmick. Yeah, I don't know. I think, can I call it a gimmick? It's kind of like a bathrobe. Like, I guess there's a case for, fashion brands and luxury brands to make bathrobes because, you know, if you're going to buy a bathrobe, but you're rich and you want it to be a designer bathrobe, why not buy it from, Jacquemus or someone else? So I guess there's like a use case. I wouldn't quite call that a gimmick. I think a gimmick is more akin to like some things that Demna does. I just said Bobby Abley's brother is underneath you in your hostel and is very loudly snoring. Yeah, exactly what Understitch is saying. Honestly, towels are so on brand for Jacquemus. Exactly. Which is why for Jacquemus, I wouldn't call it a gimmick. I think it's more of like part of the lifestyle and the branding of what Jacquemus, represents, versus exactly what Understitch is saying. Balenciaga's towel is way more a gimmick. So I think it also, when it comes to things that are gimmicky, the context of what the brand represents and the ideas of the brand and just the brand messaging from the brand kind of relates to if something that they do is a gimmick or not. And also what the designer says also. So yeah, all that sort of stuff is really, really important when considering these things. This YouTube channel runs on your support. If you want to support the channel, you can subscribe to my Patreon. You'll gain access to exclusive content that includes everything from my Patreon podcast, where I give a behind-the-scenes insight into the fashion industry, as well as a fashion book club, where I review my favorite fashion books. You can also check out my fashion ebook, which highlights the best fashion journalists to follow, definitions of common fashion terminology, and how to determine what a good source of fashion information is. The links to everything are in the description below.